In this topic, we're going to have a look at water and its functions. So by the end of the topic, you should be able to describe the crucial role that water plays in maintaining life on Earth, both as a constituent of living organisms and the environment. So what is the structure of water? Well, water is made up of one oxygen and two hydrogen atoms, and they form a triangular shape with an angle of about 104.5 degrees between them. Each hydrogen shares a pair of electrons with the oxygen. The oxygen has got a greater affinity for electrons than the hydrogens. This means that it's going to pull on the electrons more strongly. This makes oxygen slightly negative, so we say it's delta negative, and hydrogen slightly positive, delta positive. This creates different charged regions in water, making water a polar molecule. And because it's got two charged regions, we call it dipolar. So different poles attract, and therefore the positive pole of one water molecule will be attracted to the negative pole of another water molecule. The attractive force between the opposite charges is called a hydrogen bond. Now, each hydrogen bond is quite weak, but if you've got numerous hydrogen bonds, it makes water a very stable structure. Here you can see another representation of the hydrogen bonds shown in red. Notice how it occurs between the opposite charges. As water molecules are attracted to each other, it takes more energy from heat to separate them. So it's this reason that the boiling point of water is higher than expected. So without hydrogen bonding, water would be a gas at room temperature. Now there are other dipoles. You've got dipoles occurring in a big atom. Well, where you find a big atom, for example, oxygen. So OH groups, we say, are dipoles. They are hydrophilic, so they're attracted to water. C double bond O groups are polar. NH groups are also polar. We're going to look at the different properties of water and how they're important for living organisms. So we'll be discussing water as a solvent, water as a transport medium, the thermal properties of water, density and freezing, surface tension and cohesion, water as a lubricant, water metabolism, and then why is water, or how is water being transparent useful. So what I would do is I'd copy these down, press pause, copy these down, and then annotate or add notes as you go along. Okay, let's start off with the first one. Water is a solvent. Water easily dissolves other substances. It attracts molecules with a charge, as you can see here, surrounds them and separates them. This is used for transport such as sugars in blood, removal of wastes, for example, ammonia and urea, and then secretions such as digestive juices. Here you can see water molecules surrounding a sodium ion. So the sodium ion is charged, and it can separate the sodium from chloride ions. So this would be an example of how salt dissolves in water. Water is a transport medium. Water is used as a transport medium in blood, lymphatic, excretory, and digestive systems in animals. It's also used in the vascular systems in plants. Thermal properties of water. As already discussed, you've got hydrogen bonds between the water molecules, and energy is required to change the state of water, such as from a solid to a liquid. So why is this important for living organisms? We say that water has a high specific heat capacity. This means that sea and lake water is slow to change temperature. So it makes water a stable habitat for organisms to live in. Water is also slow to freeze, so it provides a stable environment for living organism bodies and habitats. Large animals have got a high water content, so they heat and cool slowly too. Water's got a high latent heat of vaporization. This just means that when water evaporates, it uses energy, and this results in cooling. For example, when the water evaporates off a dog's tongue, the blood flowing through the tongue will be able to cool down, since energy is used in the evaporation of the water from the surface of the tongue. Okay, moving on to density and freezing. Now, most substances are at their least dense when they are a gas and at their most dense when they are solid. Water is different. Water is actually less dense in the form of ice than when it is a liquid. This property is important for aquatic organisms. What happens is the water freezes at the top of lakes and ponds to form ice. So ice is being formed from the surface downwards. The ice at the top then acts as an insulating layer that delays the freezing of the water beneath it. So organisms can survive in very cold environments because the water is not going to freeze completely. So here you can see an iceberg floating because ice is less dense than water. We call this strange property anomalous expansion, where ice is less dense than water and therefore floats. Now, why does it do this? If you have a look here, you can see that the water molecules are held in a rigid structure when they are in the form of ice. So when they are solid, they're held in a rigid structure with lots of open space between them. This makes ice less dense than liquid water. The changes of density in water with temperature causes currents, so it helps circulate nutrients in the oceans. And then water is also a dense medium and provides support for organisms, which means that they require less supporting tissue than on land. Moving on to surface tension and cohesion. The tendency of molecules to stick together is called cohesion. With its hydrogen bonding, water has large cohesive forces, and this allows it to be pulled through a tube, such as xylem vessels in plants. High cohesion results in high surface tension at the surface of water. For example, some organisms can walk on water. So what happens is the water molecules at the surface of a body of water tend to be pulled back into the body of water rather than escaping from it. This force is called surface tension and means that water, the surface of the water, acts like a skin. So now you know why pond skaters can walk on water. Cohesion and surface tension also explains why water droplets are formed and can run off a surface. Water is a lubricant. Water, in combination with certain proteins, can make a very good lubricant. For example, mucus helps earthworms move through the soil, and it also helps with internal environments, such as in the gut. Then fluids in the joints and around lungs reduce friction. Water metabolism. Water is used to break down many complex molecules by hydrolysis. Chemical reactions take place in an aqueous environment. And water is also the raw material in photosynthesis. So 3 things: water used in metabolism, hydrolysis, chemical reactions require an aqueous environment, and water is the raw material in photosynthesis. And then lastly, water is transparent. Since water is transparent, aquatic plants can photosynthesize below water. So what have we learned in this lesson? Well, we discussed how the sharing of electrons is called covalent bond. Unequal sharing of electrons results in an unequal charge, for example, dipoles. You've got the negative oxygen can attract a positive hydrogen on a different molecule. This creates a hydrogen bond, as you can see here. What are the different properties of water and how is it important for living organisms? We looked at water as a solvent, water as a transport medium, the thermal properties of water, density and freezing, surface tension and cohesion, water as a lubricant, water metabolism, and how water being transparent is important. And that concludes our lesson. The end.